There is a lot of activities going on in terms of finding ways how the EU can contribute towards the de-escalation. You have seen the statements of High Representative on Friday after the killing of General Soleimani. You have seen the statements also on Libya. I don't think I need to recall what was in those statements, but what is very important is that High Representative is very much engaged in contacts with all the relevant partners to find a way how to contribute to the de-escalation, because de-escalation is something no one can afford and it's in no one's interest, because de-escalation leads only to more violence, to more tensions, and in the end to more suffering for the wider region and for the people in this region.
Yes, and let me add that the President has been in close contact with the High Representative and will be coming out with a statement in the course of the afternoon. Yes, please.
Can I insist a bit on the next steps regarding Iran? Because I saw the tweet from the High Representative, and beyond the expressions of regret and concern and all that, can you walk us through the next steps following Iran's announcements regarding its nuclear deal? Thank you.
You know that it's in our interest as Europeans to maintain this agreement. This is a cornerstone of the architecture, of the non-proliferation architecture, and very important achievement of the international diplomacy. The JCPOA, the nuclear deal, was a result of intensive diplomatic efforts, which can bring fruits and which can work if all the participants stick to the agreement. For us, it's really regrettable to see the announcement of Iran, but then we have to, and as we said always before, we have to rely and we have to see what the International Atomic Energy Agency says about the deeds on the ground. So at this stage, although HRVP expressed his deep regret about the announcement from Iran, he at the same time underlined that we are relying on the verification of all the steps Iran is doing, of all the commitments Iran is supposed to maintain by the IAEA.
Follow up?
To clarify, so this means that any discussion about potential reinstatement of sanctions against Iran would only come after IAEA verification, right?
That's the procedure so far. Every decisive step towards either sanction or the escalation in terms of sanctioning or scaling down on the sanctions follows the assessment of the IAEA, which is an agency which has the competence, which follows the obligations and how the commitments are being met and makes the necessary reports.
Yes. On this, yes, please.
Well, Happy New Year from my side also. Peter, the High Representative has invited the Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif. So has there been a response from the Iranian side? Thank you.
Well, as you mentioned, High Representative, among other partners, talked on the phone over the weekend with Foreign Minister of Iran, Mr. Zarif, invited him to Brussels to continue the engagement. Both of them in their conversation stressed that the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, is very important, and they were very clear that the only way forward is to continue the engagement on all the political levels. So HRVP invited the Iranian minister to Brussels. It's up to the Iranian side to take up on the invitation and proceed. I understand that there is interest on both sides to continue the mutual engagement.
Yes, yeah.
Happy New Year. Just wondering if Mr. Zarif is coming, because he's under pressure in Iran. The hardliners talking about no negotiations, no other negotiations. We should really withdraw with the JCPOA. Is he coming or not? Do you have any message of? Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, I can speak only on behalf of the one who made the invitation. We invited him for continued engagement in Brussels, and there is a mutual understanding that the engagement should continue, but it's on the Iranian side to let us know how they want to proceed.
Follow up, yeah.
Just about nuclear negotiation, or you will talk about what's happened with General Soleimani in Iraq also?
It's the whole package, basically. It's the whole situation in the region, so it's everything.
Okay, still on this? Yes, Griselda.
Pardon pour ceux qu'on est rentré un peu en retard. Bonjour et bonne année. J'aimerais savoir, est-ce que M. Borrell va convoquer un conseil de ministres des Affaires extérieures?
Yes, on this, as I mentioned before, there is a lot of activity going on, a lot of communication, a lot of phone calls have been made. So the situation is very, very flexible and develops as we speak. So I wouldn't go into confirming or denying anything which might not be valid anymore in 1 hour. So I cannot really say anything beyond the schedule of few hours right now, but there are a lot of activities, a lot of discussions going on. Also at the level of the EU member states, how to proceed in terms of finding common answer and discuss the common position. So I think you will get the clear answer to your question very, very soon.
So watch this space. Yes, please.
Hi, sorry, Matina Stavish from the New York Times. Just to flip the question on communications with the other side, can you talk a bit about any communications between the EU and the Trump administration? Does the Commission have a position on whether this killing or assassination was a good idea? And do you expect to be briefed on further plans? Have you any information about the threatened attack on potential cultural sites in Iran? And what do you think about this, this plan? So if you can just talk a little bit about the engagement on the US side.
The EU in general and HRVP personally is focused on very strong and very active engagement to get the message across that we cannot afford further escalation. And what is also part of our message is that what we keep in mind and what is at the cornerstone of our efforts and foreign policy is the multilateralism, so engaging with a lot of partners. So he is making as we speak, and he will be making a number of calls to all the relevant partners. We are not going to comment on every single call, but there is a lot of activity, a lot of calls being made, a lot of conversations being done. So the engagement continues in very many directions and on many different levels, with the ultimate aim to contribute to the escalation.
Okay, still questions on this?